TV47, Charlie Rowing, European football journalist here in the United Kingdom. And it's the weekend of the world's greatest domestic competition, the FA Cup. But before I speak about that, I just want to quickly talk about the current state of the Premier League, as we had some very exciting matches midweek. Now, when I last spoke to you, Arsenal were top of the table, and they still are. That's despite drawing 1-1 against Brentford in what was a tough and tight game for the Gunners. But look, Brentford is always a tough place to go to, and similar to Bournemouth, whom I mentioned last week, they're becoming one of those established, organised and difficult Premier League sides to play against. So I think it needs to be seen as a good point for Mikel Arteta's men, especially considering that they're in 7th place. As far as their closest challengers, Man City, are concerned, well, it's been job done for them in terms of what they can affect. They won last weekend, coming from behind with a late Erling Haaland penalty at Anfield to win 2-1, and then they beat Fulham comfortably 3-0 in the week for Pep Guardiola's men to keep pace with the leaders. Finally, let's round it off by talking about Aston Villa. Still Premier League long shots, still 7 points behind Arsenal, and after a disappointing draw from their perspective against Bournemouth, they followed it up with a late 1-0 win against Brighton. They still have to play Man City again this season, having beaten them already, and whilst they may not finish in first place, they can have their sights set on a very respectable second. Although let's be honest, even finishing 3rd or 4th would represent a fantastic season for the Villains. Nonetheless, it still remains a very exciting Premier League title race, and one that you can follow all season on TV47. But now let's turn towards the FA Cup. It's the 4th round this weekend, and we already had Chelsea sweep aside Hull 4-0 last night, with Pedro Neto grabbing a hat-trick, whilst Wrexham defeated Ipswich 1-0 in an all-championship affair. And today, we've got some very tasty ties. For me, the standout just has to be Man City against Salford City. Going beyond the obvious gulf between Premier League versus League Two, you've also got the subplot of Manchester United versus Manchester City. As in case you didn't know, the owners of Salford are Project 92, headed up by Gary Neville and David Beckham, with fellow Manchester United class of 92 players, Nicky Butt, Ryan Giggs, Phil Neville and Paul Scholes still having an involvement. So of course, they will love it if they could spring some sort of an upset. However, with the amount of quality and players that Man City have, it's going to be a hell of an ask for Salford. But City do have previous of being knocked out of the FA Cup by lower league opposition. Wigan in League One knocked them out in 2018. They lost to Championship Nottingham Forest in 2010 and League One Oldham in 2008. So you never know. Elsewhere, there are 2 all-Premier League ties between Aston Villa and Newcastle and Liverpool against Brighton. And a potential FA Cup would be massive for all the teams concerned. Yes, even Liverpool, who have had a disaster in the Premier League this season after last year's triumph by Arne Slot. And then tomorrow, there's another huge tie and another potential giant killing on the cards as Arsenal host League One Wigan Athletic at the Emirates. As I mentioned already, Wigan have got previous of knocking out big sides from the competition and for big wins in London, as they also famously won the FA Cup at Wembley in 2013, beating Manchester City. Again, like with City, you would expect Arsenal to have enough quality on the day, but that's why they mention the magic of the Cup, as you just don't know what could happen. In any case, remember to catch all the FA Cup action live on TV47. Thank you.
All right, Charlie Rowling, they are giving us an in-depth analysis, in-depth information, and also in-depth analysis regarding the English Premier League, akiwa kwa mali yako kule UK. Atuambia Arsenal inakaa kuwa ngumu.